Hello and welcome to a video on the gouges that Robust Tools manufactures. All of our gouges are made of premium high-speed steel and heat treated to Rockwell 6364. They have a proprietary nitrating treatment and they're available handled and unhandled. Well, what's nitrating? Nitrating is not a coating or a plating. It's actually a treatment that goes right into the base metal. It's a process that adds extra carbon and nitrogen. The result is significantly improved edge holding and reduced sharpening. Let's talk first about our bowl gouges. All of our bowl gouges feature a polished parabolic flute. The parabolic flute is friendliest for a variety of grinds, be it a swept-back fingernail grind, 40/40 grind, or traditional bowl grind. The parabolic flute is deep enough to give you good material ejection, but not so deep as to weaken the gouge. We grind the gouges to a 60-degree angle, and we add a secondary bevel. The secondary bevel allows you to make tighter corners on the inside of a cut, and it also prevents some of the burnishing you get if you don't remove that heel material. We also flat mill the top of the gouge, and this allows you to use your sharpening jig full length. A little bit more on that later. We also use the American style of measuring our gouges. For instance, a 5/8 inch gouge is made from 5/8 inch oversized material, and the diameter is turned to the true diameter. Our detail spindle gouges are made with a radiused flute, and that radius matches the diameter of the gouge. We grind these at a 45-degree angle, and a lot of people actually like to grind these a little bit sharper than that. Like the bowl gouge, they are flat milled for your sharpening jig, and they are made from oversized stock with the diameter turned true. Well, let's do a little turning. I'm going to start out by putting a dovetail tenon on the bottom of this walnut piece that we're going to make a little box out of. Here I'm just using the side of the gouge to relieve material, and then I'm going to go in with the point of the gouge to actually make the dovetail. Turning the piece around now, I'm first going to take a little bit of a cleanup cut with the bowl gouge, just a little scraping cut to establish a clean surface, and then I'm going to start hollowing it out. And I think here is where you're going to be able to see the benefit of this double bevel, because as I get into the part, you're going to see that I'm going to be able to make a pretty good right angle turn when I get down here, and I'm not going to be rubbing on the heel of the gouge because I removed that with that secondary bevel. And you can see that I was able to get quite deep and still have a pretty good corner down in there. Now I'm going to switch back to the spindle gouge, and I'm going to roll some beads like you might do with a skew. This is a pretty easy cut. You just take your gouge and get your cut established, and then just roll it over on the side and start turning your beads. Well, let's move on to some bigger wood. We're going to rough turn a bowl blank here, and I'm going to use our bowl drive to do a friction drive on our piece. I first start out by tapping that in pretty vigorously to make a ring for the bowl drive to go into, and then I'm going to bring up the center and get things lined up before we start cutting. So remember now, this is all being driven just by friction by our bowl drive. And I'm going to start out taking some pretty aggressive cuts to get this thing rounded up. And here I'm just beginning to form the dovetail. Now I've switched back over to the detail gouge to make the dovetail. I'm going to make a nice dovetail here that's going to match the chuck jaws that I'm going to use when I turn this around. And then I'm also going to use the detail gouge to remove this little tenon that I'm going to break off before I put it into the chuck. Before I take it all the way off, though, I want to show you how effective this bowl drive is in friction driving the wood. And here I'm taking some pretty aggressive cuts. I want to get down below the pith that was left in this bowl blank to reduce my chances of the blank cracking as it's drying. And you can see here I can be pretty aggressive just driving this with friction. Now with the piece turned around, I'm using a 5/8 inch bowl gouge to do my heavy roughing. And I've also selected our S-curved tool rest. Like all of our tool rests, it has a hardened rod on the top. Gives you a nice smooth movement as you're moving your gouge in. One of the things I like to do when I'm turning is I don't like to make that cut all the way across the bottom. I like to stop, leave that nubbin, and then plunge cut that off. And that prevents you from overshooting your mark and jabbing your gouge into the opposite side of the bowl. The S-curve tool rest is made so that you can typically just loosen up your handle and pivot it into the work a little bit further when you want to change your position. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that we flat mill the top of all of our gouges so that you can use your sharpening jig full length. Let's first take a look at a regular gouge that is not flat milled. You can see that it's round back here. And when I put the sharpening jig on and I tighten it down, I can only move it back about to the point where the round portion starts. So there's about 2 inches of sharpenability that I lose with this style of gouge. So we mill ours flat on the top so you can put your sharpening jig all the way back. That concludes our gouge video. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you'd like to learn more, please visit our website, turnrobust.com. Thank you.